I am really happy to introduce you to Pacome Thiellement. You have to pronounce the L, I heard. C'est pas Thiellement, c'est Thiellement. And he's a writer, essayist, living in Paris. He is wonderfully open and eclectic, a person with a huge horizon. He wrote about 15 books, and his interest is focused on pop culture, but also referring to ancient spiritual traditions. So his last book is on Gnosis, La Victoire des 100 Rois. And the next one is going to be on Shakespeare. And he's also producing films with the help of other
Thomas Berthet.
And there is a film series now planned or in production, starting with films on Frank Zappa. And the edition is called Stupor Mundi, which I think is also beautiful, the stupefaction of the world. I leave you the microphone with this.
Okay, thank you very much, Biche. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm a bit nervous because it's the first time I do all of that in English. I'm used to speak in French, but I'm not the only one who has to do that, so I'm not gonna expand on how difficult it is to do that in English. I'll just try to go with it. And if what I say doesn't mean anything to you or doesn't make sense, maybe I'll give you the text I wrote before, so I assure you I tried to make something out of the mess in my head. I try to answer this question, which is a very difficult question of the relationship between man and the countryside or the nature, like everyone else before. And I was very interested in what I've heard, especially the idea that the situation changed, that before someone like Brecht could say, when you write about a tree, this is obscene because of the man had to struggle for living. And today it's different because the tree also has to struggle to live, and it's a fight for nature to live. Well, it's the whole ecological situation made it pretty different than what was before, which is, on a way, there was like something that was a constant, which was nature, and nature was serenity. It was associated with serenity, the serenity of nature, the cyclical nature of time in nature. And in the countryside, you could go back and took back to the idea of the slow driving time, the vast amount of time, the change of the seasons. You remember, like it was like in romantic times where they had to go back to the countryside to find back their inner self that was inside nature, and the city was taking them away from it, alienating for them. And it goes very, very far in ancient times where you had the idea of a cyclical nature of time, cyclical time, opposed to the time of the monotheism, which is the arrow. If you remember, it has been many times simplified like that, or generalized like that. The ancient live in a cyclical time, which is going from Golden Age to, the Iron Age, and like going to serenity or beautiful or unity of man and nature to destruction completely. And it has to go past a cycle of destruction to go back to rebirth and reconstruction. That's the times of the ancient. You find that idea when you read about like Hopi mythology. You read that in the Dogon. You read that also in the. Of course, you had the four ages of humanity in like it's called the yugas in Indian metaphysics, in the Upanishad. And you have that even in the ancient Greek text. You find that in Hesiod. I don't know if they say Hesiod in English. Hesiod or Hesiodus or Hesiod, I don't know. Hesiod, well, the Theogonia, and there is the idea of starting back, there was the Golden Age, and we drove away from the Golden Age, and man went away from the Golden Age, but then it will come back to the beginning and it will start again, and it's the idea of the cyclical times. And then come monotheism, and with the idea of difference between nature and man is a direct connection with God. And nature is maybe like a playground or something when he can that can use for many purposes, and mainly for food. And animals are also at his disposition. You see that in the Genesis, and God created so and so and so and so, and then he created man and says, hey, here's for you. You're my favorite son. I like you very, very much. You look just like me. Use it. And use it for your own good. And work it. And then it's not only the monotheism that got into this idea of the separation between man and nature, create another timeline, a very different timeline. The idea of the arrow, the idea that there was a beginning of times. God created time, and there will be an end. And that's all the eschatological texts that tell you about it. And the most famous one, the one that is the Book of Revelation that you have just at the end of the book, not really your kind of happy end that you like, but yeah, it's most destruction ending, and just a few will be spared for it, and if they have worked really, really, really well for that. And but it's the idea of the arrow, and you can never go back to the initial situation. You just go away from it, and you just go away from it, and it's this time. It's not the time. It's not the time linked with nature. It's time only linked with man, with the creations that man do in relationship with God, and then without the relationship with God, relationship with production or technique. I'm doing it really like the shortest resume ever. It's something that normally someone more serious than me will spend 1 year speaking about it, and I'm trying to do it in 5 minutes because we have 20 minutes left, so I'm trying to do it really fast because that's not where I'm heading. It's the idea that there is a cyclical time and the arrow time is either progress or destruction, is not the only way to see it. There is a third way. There's always a third way. There is a third option. There has always been another way of seeing the relationship between man and nature. Only we know less about it. We speak less about it. It's not the biggest headlines. It's the idea, but now is the time when we can apprehend it, we can comprehend what is this other way. And if the first vision of time and the relationship between man and nature, cyclical, was considered like a cycle, and the second one, an arrow, there is the idea of the broken arrow. It's the specialist in Gnosticism, Henri Charles Puech, that elaborated on that during his famous lessons in the Collège de France in the 50s, the one where Queneau and all the writers were going, and it was interesting to hear about the idea that there is maybe another way of seeing time, the broken arrow. We're neither in a progressive time, neither in a decay, neither in a cycle. Something has been broken. There have been one break in the whole creation, and we are in this break. And in this break, it's a mixed up stuff between it's a constant fight in every part of this world, and in every creature, and in every part of the world, not only the animals, not only the men, also nature, they're always fighting. They're always fighting, and inside it's always a fight for beauty, to get the upper hand against darkness and ugliness and decay and death. And beauty try to arise from it. And that's how Mani, the prophet Mani, saw it. And Mani, the prophet Mani, for the 3rd century after Christ, 3rd and 4th century. It was after a long story of those guys that the Christian called them the Gnostics. It was a mocking term about them. It was the one who didn't want the church, the one who wanted to follow Jesus Christ, but without the church, without the authority, without the hierarchy, without the apostle, the saints, all this boring stuff. And they just wanted to go and to be as helpful they could to the people, the best way to see life and to seek for the truth and freedom and everything. And everything we just can... We can like them. And of course, they were seen as the biggest threat for the church. So they called them the Gnostic. Gnostic comes from gnosis. Gnosis means knowledge. And they were like the knowers, but like in a very, very bad way, like the snobbish guys. The one who says, oh yeah, but we know what's better. We don't need the church. And they destroyed them, then they destroyed the text, and suddenly someone appeared in Persia named Mani. Mani was in a little Judeo-Christian community, and he had a vision of an angel, Altaun, and the angel told him, don't stay in the community, it's really too narrow-minded. Travel the world, seek beauty, lightness, goodness, everywhere you go. And Mani stand up and go away and seek. And he's sick in every religion. It could be the first syncretist, if you want to call it that way. He was interested in Judaism, Christianism, but also in Persian mythology. He was, of course, of a Persian background, but in a Judeo-Christian community. And he was also interested in Buddhism and in Hinduism. And he was going through everything, seeking from in each religion and each spirituality the fight between lightness and darkness. The initial fight that you can find everywhere. I wanted to speak about Twin Peaks and the relationship with nature because, you know, where I come from, in Paris, everybody speaks about Twin Peaks all the time. I'm a big fan too. And it's like, it's easier to explain something using Twin Peaks elements. It's like the gospel now. You know, it's like you tell gospel stories. To tell Twin Peaks stories, you know. It was like the day Del Cooper saw that, blah, 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 blah. But I don't know if everyone here is very familiar with Twin Peaks. Yes? Yes, no? Please, raise your hand if you are familiar with Twin Peaks. Oh, you are? Okay, so partly. No, because Twin Peaks 25 years ago tried to show a relationship between a community and a natural environment. For someone who was very much a city guy like me, born and raised in Paris, the idea that you could live in harmony with nature was very much what attracted me when I saw Twin Peaks the first time. I saw Twin Peaks and I saw this gigantic tree, the beautiful mountains, like the beautiful nature, and this community of Twin Peaks, which was like a natural community. It was like a community of nature, and it was like a community where harmony was first, and disorder was second, and goodness and helping people and being nice was first, and doing evil stuff was second. And you could see that with the character of the FBI agent Del Cooper going to Twin Peaks and saying, "My, all those trees are beautiful, and wow, I just saw rabbits, and it's great, and can I have a cup of coffee, please? Oh, the coffee is great too." And it was like some city guy enchanted by nature, really loving it, and the nature shown as a very, very beautiful thing. It was the beginning of the 90s. We were going out of the 80s. The 80s was the vulgar era. It was 10 years of just money and publicity and really lousy haircuts. And remember the mullet? You couldn't even, no one could find the idea of the mullet unless it was the 80s. Maybe it was the drugs, maybe it was too much cocaine, I don't know. And you snort too much cocaine, you get the idea that the mullet is the coolest haircut ever. Then you go down and you say, what did I do with my life? Okay, and you were going into the 90s and you were taking away the 80s and saying maybe we have lost something. Let's go back. Let's go back to where we had harmony and we had a community of nature. And it's very much looking at the world with the idea of nostalgia. It was already nostalgia. And they go to Twin Peaks, and of course there is the story of the murder of a young girl, Laura Palmer. And it's like, you know, like the world, the very ironic word Karl Marx used in the beginning of his text about the Louis Bonaparte, like looking like a thunderbolt in the southern sky. And of course, it's an illusion. It has never been a community of nature. It has never been a place of goodness and harmony and just one murder and it's throw the town apart. No, it's just a facade. It's just because there still was like a middle class community that was able to pretend that could go on forever. And in between the two Twin Peaks, the Twin Peaks about back then and the Twin Peaks of today, there have been the economic crisis and like the slowly dismantling of the middle class. You know, this economic crisis is always related to, in the season 3 of Twin Peaks, it's incredible when you watch it because David Lynch seems so much away from politics when you discover his work. It's like he doesn't seems like a political guy, and then you see the season 3 and it's everywhere. It's like we're the 99%. The economic crisis is so big. People are selling blood just to get something to eat. And you go and you see the character of Twin Peaks and they're all living, you know, like in caravans, where they used to live in beautiful houses. And you have like the psychoanalyst of the city, Dr. Jacobi, who used to be the psychoanalyst for the rich people. And now he's living in a trailer and he's doing like YouTube shows. And he's like an activist and saying, those fuckers are at it again. And we have to fight against that. And people are watching it and say, yes, yes, yes. And it's like, yeah, there has been a massive crisis. And what's done is that the whole vision of nature changed overnight. They are saying, no, it has always been that way. This world has never been a world of peace and harmony, and it has always been a world where the light has to conquer the darkness. The sun has to conquer the night. It has to make his way through it. That's the Manichaean idea. That's going through everything, saying this creation was not a beautiful creation. It was created by a very evil genius. The God that created this world is not a good God. It's not a benevolent God. It's a crazy motherfucker God that doesn't give a shit about his creation. He just wants to have fun with it. He's saying, yes, everything's for you, ha ha ha, and then you just die using it, and he's like just watching and eating popcorns and seeing the whole world going to an end very happily. If you don't want to create goodness in this world and beauty in this world, you have to create against everything. And nature had to do it too. And that's what the Manichaeans saw. The Manichaeans saw the beauty in nature. They loved animals. Of course, they were vegetarians, like the Gnostics. That's also a very long thread. It's not recent things. It's not like the vegan stuff just 5 years ago. There has always been people like that. They were anti-misogynist also. That's a long story. They were anti-hierarchy. There was like anarchist to the core, to the bone. That's a long story. There has always been people like that. And they were seeing nature not as the place of hierarchy and of order, but a place of fight for beauty to exist in this world. That's the idea. And that's maybe the greatness of our times, our days today, is to get an idea of the world that could make us understand what all those people saw. Because it's easier today. It's easier today, for instance, the depiction of evil in Manichaean poems. It's a creature created all by a black liquid form. It's like black liquid turning into a figure. It's created. It's shown as coming from deep down in the earth and coming up like that and trying to destroy everything on his way. It looks like pollution coming from oil. That's completely crazy. You read their poems and you see it. My God, have they seen oil? That's visionary poetry. In visionary poetry, of course, they're not talking only about their times. They're talking about very larger times, and sometimes they're seeing problems that other people don't see yet, but will be the core of the destruction of what they fight for. So that's where we're heading now. And Twin Peaks is a good example, and that's why I wanted to, but I just did it like a shortened way of doing it. It's like, it's typically a work of a TV series, very popular, and who changed over the 25 years in a very drastically way, coming from trying to restore the harmony and restore the order of nature to discovering that the nature of nature itself is war, it's fight. It's like also Heraclitus said that. It's like war is at the bone of everything. It started like that. And that's maybe the reason why, okay, spoiler for the one who didn't finish season 3, they resurrect Laura Palmer. Because it's like the only character in the first one that was really knowing that Twin Peaks was hell, that every community of nature is deeply hell, so that's the one who can really destroy it, really is not afraid to go and to fight. So we need that today. We need really to see that. That's maybe the idea. Is it too short, too long? I don't know. Okay. You want to sit next to me?
Fantastic! Thank you so much. I'm in stupor.
Was it? Okay.
Yes. So maybe someone has a very rational question. No, I think.
Usual suspects.
Yeah, Eva. Eva, you got the microphone.
So Adrian Villarojas said everybody is placing the beginning of the Aerocene in another place, in another event, historical. And I had the impression you place it with the beginning of the monotheism. Is it right?
Well, that's because I'm just starting now. Because if you get me started, I can go before 2, but not today. For a start, we'll start with the beginning of monotheism. But I'll be really, really happy to speak about more ancient times too. The problem started when life started.
Other questions?
Building on your observations, a very simple question. Why do you think Twin Peaks is such a success?
Why Twin Peaks is such a success? I think because, like major popular works of art, it speaks to the deepest way into the heart of people. They don't have to understand it in a cerebral way. In fact, it's better if they don't. It's like pop music. It's pop music. It's filled with very, very important, truthful, sentences, sometimes very hermetic sentences. In fact, if you go and look into them, starting from blues songs or folk songs, but very much into like Beatles songs, you have a lot of very ancient traditional ideas, and the musician, they don't have to know them either. They don't have to know why they're saying that, they just have to feel it. It's like poetry. You have to be inspired. And I think maybe I'm not a rational person. Maybe. At least I can say I didn't major in science. Like, it was obvious, right? Okay, but I think when we say something is very inspired, that means the artist doesn't necessarily know why he is doing it. He just feels he has to do it that way. And if he does, that means something is speaking through him. And this something, you can call it, if you're very, very against any mystical explanation, just call it the unconscious and you'll be fine with it. Subconscious. But as soon as you put some mystical ingredients in it, you can say the divinity. There's many ways of seeing the divinity, but in a Gnostic approach, in the Manichaean approach, there is two major divinities. The very bad one, which is like the God who created this evil world where everyone is fighting and everyone is destroying themselves and eating each other and everything like that. That's the God which has, let's say, a very peculiar sense of humor. And there is another divinity, which is the inner divinity. That everybody tells about that, but if we are serious about this idea, that means when you're inspired, that's what is speaking to you. It's like something like a knowledge, a profound knowledge of something that's tried to reach out the surface, like it was in jail and muted and tried to speak. And that's the way Gnostic texts describe this divinity. Like this world, if this world is considered a jail, the real divinity is in a jail within a jail, our heart. Like very, very much in a jail, and trying to reach and to speak to us, like, free me, please free me. No, but free beauty, free truth, free friendship, free love, free everything. It's like none of this is natural. The natural stuff is war and destruction and a struggle, and the biggest the winner takes all, and the house always wins, and everything like that. That's the gigantic casino of the bad god. You all play, but at the end, the house always wins. But the real divinity is like something trying to reach out to your conscience, and it's poetry. So when something is good, when you are very much inspired by something, it's like you have the connection. It's like you create the connection. And Twin Peaks create a gigantic amount of connection back then and today, in between the gigantic economic crisis that, like, it's not like it's like, you know, the economic crisis. It's like also you can say it's like a thunderbolt in the southern sky, and it's like, yeah, but everyone was very not happy before. It's not like the rest of the world was facing gigantic economic problems. The economic crisis of the middle class. So especially the one that are the watcher of the TV shows. So this one can relate to that now, and we can say we're not spared. We're not like we're spared of everything. We're part of this world. We also struggle. Sorry, I'm making very, very long.
So that's now a beautiful bridge to poetry and music. First, yeah.
No, yeah.
My two Perret. Thank you.